Got my notes, check. Pepsi, check. Sunglasses, check. Hat, check. Thick skin, check. And sources, check. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Blue Dude, everybody. This is where we cover all of college football. So if you're a college football fan, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button. I call my Patreons the shot callers, and I can't wait to live stream some games and watch it with my Patreons and the score prediction contest. That's going to be fun. Whenever I talk about conference realignment, there's one thing that people don't realize. It's a fluid situation. What's true today might not necessarily be true tomorrow because of a decision of somebody involved in the news. They could decide to do something else, and that changes everything. Well, right now, it's looking like Arizona and Colorado are expected to apply to the Big 12 in the next couple of days, and the Big 12 was expected to approve it immediately, and that would be phase 1. Phase 2 would be then Arizona State and Utah would apply to the Big 12, and they probably would get accepted immediately. However, those plans might get put on hold, and it's because of Oregon. Oregon is now a little bit panicky about the situation. They don't want to get left out. Their first choice was the Big Ten. And in fact, Oregon and Washington applied to the Big Ten, but the Big Ten turned them down. They accepted UCLA and USC, so then Oregon and Washington applied, but they were turned down. The Big Ten really wants Notre Dame, so they're probably trying to work on a package to where they can get Stanford. Maybe that will draw in Notre Dame. But for now, it's a no from the Big Ten for Oregon and Washington. And that has Oregon a little bit panicky right now because they don't want to get left out. They want to explore their options. What I'm hearing is they are right now, at this very moment, actively exploring their options. As before, they didn't want anything to do with the Big 12. It was not on the table. They weren't considering it. They were going to the Big 10. Well, the Big 10 turned them down. Now they're rethinking that. Now they're looking into the Big 12. They're looking at how travel would affect them. Could they get Washington to come with them? Stuff like that. Things that would affect Oregon. Oregon might consider joining the Big 12, especially if the situation gets even more dire. Now, a lot of this hinges on Washington. Would Washington come with Oregon? The only problem with Washington is that their university president is actually a chair member of the Pac-12. So Washington might hold out hope a little bit longer that the Pac-12 can survive somehow, some way, before they make a decision to jump ship. So if Oregon's hopes of joining a conference hinges on Washington, they might have to wait a little while as well. So there's like a pecking order, and the Big 12 would prefer Oregon and Washington first over everybody else. See, here's the thing. The Big 12 doesn't want to come off too desperate. In other words, they don't want to accept everybody. Hey, if you apply, we'll accept you. They want their membership to mean something. So they want to have the best brands apply and accept them, and then maybe they'll consider the next brands. So this is kind of, it's not bad news for Colorado and Arizona. I think eventually they could still get into the Big 12, but it might be bad news for the right now if they're trying to get into the Big 12 immediately, because now they might have to wait to see if Oregon decides to apply to the Big 12. I know that Oregon is talking to the Big 12 right now. That was the point that I was trying to get across. They are actively talking to the Big 12, trying to figure out everything else. So Arizona and Colorado might have to wait as far as membership for the Big 12. That doesn't mean they're going to be denied or that they're not going to be part of the Big 12 in the future. It just means they might have to wait because Oregon and Washington are top priority. Look, I don't see the Pac-12 surviving. That was a big hit with USC and UCLA leaving. And honestly, I think the Pac-12 made a mistake by not accepting BYU. If they would have accepted BYU, the Pac-12 would have been in a much better spot right now, even with USC and UCLA leaving. They would be a more attractive conference for other bigger brands to maybe possibly consider. And then there's the TV deal. I don't know how much value they're going to get out of that TV deal. And here's the thing with Oregon and Washington staying in the Pac-12. They said the only way that they're going to stay in the Pac-12 is if they get a bigger cut from everybody else. Almost double. Think about that. Yes, their brand is valuable, but man, they're holding everybody else hostage. Hey, if you want us in the Pac-12, we got to get almost double of everybody else. That's how valuable we are. So they might be rubbing the other current members the wrong way anyways. Podcasts for Gold and Blue Dude are now available on Apple, Spotify, Substack, and TuneIn Radio. If you want to get a hold of Joey Foster, the executive producer of Gold and Blue Dude, just email him. His email address is joey@goldandbluedude.com. If you're a writer and you want to write for Gold and Blue Dude at goldandbluedude.com, just email our head writer, Scotty B, the Baylor King. His email is scott@goldandbluedude.com. And special shout out to Manyoo Brown. He is now our social media director. If you'd like to get a hold of him, his email address is manyoo@goldandbluedude.com. Now, if Washington and Oregon do leave, then the next step would be Arizona and Colorado. Then the next step after that would be Arizona State and Utah. And the Pac-12 is basically done. What happens to the remnants of the Pac-12? I think Stanford is in a good situation, especially since they have a close affiliation with Notre Dame. It's the teams like Cal, Washington State, and Oregon State that I would worry about the most. Now, they could always join the Mountain West. I know that's a step down, but I actually think they could have success in the Mountain West. It's just, there goes your chances of getting to the playoffs. Right now, technically speaking, since they're in a power conference, they have a chance to make the playoffs, even though they really don't because they're not that good. But going to the Mountain West, you absolutely have no shot of getting to the playoffs. So that's a big ticket to give up. So everything pretty much hinges on what Oregon and Washington want to do next. And this is something that I've been trying to explain. This is what's best for the Big 12. The Big 12 does need to get Oregon and Washington from the Pac-12 first and foremost, and then get Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. That's the right decision for the Big 12. The problem is they have conflicting interests with the Eastern teams. Teams like West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, because they're over here out on an island while you're adding more teams on the west side. Look, I'm okay with West Virginia staying in the Big 12 if the Big 12 does the right thing, gets teams from the west, and tries to get teams from the east. Even if they don't necessarily get those teams, at least make an effort. Show your East teams that they are valuable to you and that you are concerned with their travel. Because if not, then you're basically saying, screw you, we don't care, we're going to build on the west side. And then that's going to rub your East members the wrong way, and they might start looking for greener pastures as well. So a lot of things are still up in the air, and a lot of things still hinge on Oregon and Washington. And there's a real possibility that Oregon and Washington could join the Big 12 in the near future, and they would get the first crack at it. So you can see this happening in steps. Step 1, Washington and Oregon become members of the Big 12. Step 2, Arizona and Colorado become members of the Big 12. And then finally, step 3, Arizona State and Utah become members of the Big 12. I think the Big 12 would be a very strong conference if that happens, because right now the battle is who's going to be the third best conference. We already know that the SEC and the Big Ten, they have the best media deals and they have the best brands in their conference. They're going to be number 1 and number 2. But who's going to be number 3? Well, it looks like the Big 12 is making a big push to be the third best conference. The only other conference that has a chance of that is the ACC. And we all know that the ACC and ESPN are renegotiating their TV deal, and they need to do so because the grant of rights, yes, it does keep teams locked in, but it also keeps teams locked out. And ESPN does want to promote some big brands to the SEC, but you can also invite some big brands from the Big 12. Brands like West Virginia, Cincinnati, UCF, Oklahoma State, the Kansas schools, Iowa State, some of the Texas schools. So that's the right decision by the ACC and ESPN, because your lower brands, they're not going anywhere. Boston College is not going anywhere. Syracuse not going anywhere. Pitt not going anywhere. Wake Forest, Georgia Tech. You would have to worry about the Virginia schools, but I think Virginia Tech's going to stay in the ACC. Miami might have a choice between the Big Ten and the ACC in the near future. I'm hearing a lot of chatter that the Big Ten might be interested in Miami. But if that doesn't happen, then I think Miami stays in the ACC. And I think NC State would probably stay in the ACC. Same with Louisville, unless the Big Ten comes calling. And if the Big Ten does come calling, they'd probably be interested in a Virginia Tech, a Miami, possibly a Pitt, possibly a Syracuse. I'm not sure if the ACC could survive losing 8 members. I don't know if that would be attractive enough to get brands from the Big 12. It might actually turn things around and the Big 12 could indeed pick off from the ACC. So a lot is on the line in the next couple weeks as far as what Oregon and Washington will decide. Are they going to try to join the Big 12? Because if they do, they will be accepted, and that would change a lot of things. So y'all let me know in the comments section. Number 1, do you think Oregon and Washington end up applying to the Big 12 and become Big 12 members? And if not, where do they end up? That's all I got for you for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.